Hey John, doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. This is our first time heading up this ship here, so we shall see.
Yeah,
We got some exciting stuff going on. We're gonna take a look at a new AI template that you've built, and so we're gonna walk through that. That'll be cool. As always, we're gonna be taking anyone's questions that they have. And but before that, why don't we just introduce each of ourselves and then go through some stuff that's happened in FlutterFlow this week? How does that
sounds great.
sound?
Yeah, sounds great.
Great.
Let's do it.
Awesome. So my name is John. I'm the head of education here at FlutterFlow. You've heard me on many videos. And so that's what I do here. And Cody?
Yep, I'm with the enterprise team here at FlutterFlow, where we work with businesses trying to onboard them to the FlutterFlow. We have a retail side where all developers and consumers can use the platform, but we also have an enterprise side that we're working on kind of building out. So that's why I'm here.
Yeah, that's cool. And Cody has built some, I mean, absolutely insane apps. I mean, what we're gonna look at today was not even something that we were planning on sending out as a template for everyone, but it was just so cool, and I thought it'd be like really great to sort of like walk through it and sort of the intricacies there. So that's cool. So let's jump into some, before we get into that, some stuff that we've released, blog posts, and just stuff that's going on with Flutter Flow. And so I'm going to share my screen right here. And I'm going to share a window. And let me get this window ready here so I don't reveal all my secrets. There we go. Okay, can you see that, Cody?
Not yet.
Not yet. Oh, I gotta add it in here.
Yeah,
There we go.
there we go.
Are you good? Are you good
Perfect.
now? Okay,
Yeah.
great. Excuse me. Okay, so a couple of things right here. First was a blog post by our own Shovik, and this is integrating a FlutterFlow app with IoT devices, so Internet of Things devices. So this could, your home kit stuff, if you've got like smart home stuff, your refrigerator, stuff like that. And so he's got a great tutorial, really in-depth tutorial he's set up here with how to do that if you're looking to do IoT stuff. And it's really cheap. I've started to add in some things in my house, and I love it because I can like change the. I sound like an old person. I can change the temperature when I'm lying in bed. That's what I love about it.
Love it.
Do you have any IoT stuff, Cody?
I have a Google Home that's hooked up to some Philips Hue light bulbs, but that's about
Ah,
it.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay, so maybe you should read this.
I should start building out some FlutterFlow apps that can really streamline my life here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think I mean I think this could be so cool once we sort of like completely open up and integrate Bluetooth into FlutterFlow
Yeah,
because I mean that's just enormous.
game changer. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. All right, so the next thing is we've actually been using this internally for a long time, just for team activities, but it's super fun. And once again, Shovik designed the game Code Words in FlutterFlow, and he also integrated an AI spy master for giving clues. And so this is super fun. You can have as many people. You can have a bunch of people, and it's a very fun game. So that's
I have
code.
yet to play this, so I'm excited to
Ah,
see it.
okay, okay. It's very fun. It's very fun. Um, the next piece of news that you may have seen is that we started to produce, and this is what I've been working on, FlutterFlow University. So we've got the first, I don't know how many is here, 8 videos up. It's in this playlist right here. You can, if you go to our channel, it's the sort of like highlighted list right when you go in, and so you can find that. And the idea of this is that when you first get into FlutterFlow, you get in and you just want to sort of play around, and that's great, and just start smashing buttons, right? And we all do that, and it's great. And then I feel like there comes a time when you're like, okay, I want to sort of like take this to the next level, have a sort of comprehensive information, and so this is what this is. And so the idea of it is that it's going to bring you from a beginner to like an intermediate advanced user, I'd say. And so by the end of it, you would be able to pretty much any type of app you want to build, any type of, CRUD app where you've got a backend, you need to interact with it, read it, update stuff, have user authentication, do API calls, everything that like a normal app has, you'll be able to do that. You'll be able to understand that. And we're releasing one video every day for a long time to come. It'll end up being somewhere around 6 to 8 hours overall. And so that's the FlutterFlow University.
They're really great too. Every time I wake up, I check the FlutterFlow YouTube page. And there's always a new video, and they're very short, bite-sized, super manageable, and they get right to the point. So great job.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and that's kind of the idea, and it's what we're trying to do is not just say like what each button or each property does, but also give you some like practical tips about like, okay, so I know a container does this, but like what do most people use containers for? Or like, okay, I can generate a palette, but like what should it be? So I'm adding in there a bunch of actual sort of design principles and tips, so that it's a little bit more than just this is what this button does.
Yeah.
So,
and just
so that's
just quickly,
yeah.
We will be monitoring the chat here. So we see some questions coming in. We'll try to get to those kind of as often as we can. Just quickly, the first one that I saw there is, can we please get what's new in the FlutterFlow docs? So I think if you go into the FlutterFlow documentation site, you can scroll all the way down, and there's a new documentation release tracker. And that'll just show you what's kind of net new to the documentation. And you can kind of keep track of that for any updates that we put in there.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm always looking at that too. So thank you for that. The FlutterFlow voice is on. That's true, Joseph. I have been known to be called the voice of FlutterFlow, so I appreciate that. Great. Do we want to do any questions before we jump into this template? Is there anything else, Cody, we want to chat about?
I think we can jump right in. I'll pause this here and there just to answer questions.
Great.
But yeah, let's jump in.
Awesome. Okay, so let me jump over here. And can you see that, Cody?
I can. Yes.
Okay. So we've got a sign-in screen, a login screen already. I just went into that already because it's sort of standard login-y stuff. We've got a bunch of videos and documentation about that, so I don't want to go over that. I want to get to the meat and potatoes right here. So I want to ask anything here. So let's say, when was Messi born? Question mark. Enter. Whoa, wait, is it broken? No, it's not. That's animation, folks. We're thinking. Are you a soccer fan, Cody?
So I'm up here in Canada, so more of a hockey fan.
Got it.
But when the World Cup is on, I definitely keep track.
Yeah.
So this is calling the ChatGPT API. So the lag in response, it's not due to the app itself, it's due to the OpenAI API.
Got it. Yeah, which can be a little bit laggy. I think it's dependent upon their like backend network activity. So this is kind of normal, although this is kind of going longer than normal.
It's a bit long.
But anyways, did we want to poke around as we're waiting here for a second? So here we've got our like sort of standard UI, right, that we've become accustomed to. And let me back up for a sec to talk about like the structure of what we're doing. So Cody built this, and I just want to kind of understand it. So I'm gonna just kind of look through here and ask Cody questions. And if you have questions of Cody as well, that would be great. Because I think why this would be great is because this is like a simple but like elegant implementation. That's what I immediately thought when I saw this, and I sent Cody a message where I'm just like, I looked through like how it's set up, and I'm like, this is such just like a perfect solution for this like chat dialogue and the code and everything that we have set up, and so it got me excited because it's not hacky at all. It's just really elegant, and I loved it. And so, so that's what we're gonna do. So first question for you, Cody, is what's gonna happen if I press this trash can up here?
Yeah, so back on the kind of home screen, when you initiated the chat and sent in your first prompt, that actually created a new chat in the Firebase backend, right?
Okay.
So we have kind of a chat collection, and then within each of the chat collection, you have kind of a sub collection of messages associated to
Amazing.
each chat. So if you click the top right button there, that's a delete button. That would delete the entire kind of chat reference for this particular chat and bring you back to the landing page in order to start a new chat.
Okay, amazing. Can I try this right now? Maybe just like ask
Yeah,
the question.
I say we try again, see if
Okay,
the
sounds
API
good.
works this time.
Okay, maybe it just doesn't like messy, you know?
So I should say, and I'm sure we'll get into this, but this chat is currently, it has the context around education, right?
Okay.
And we can change that once we get into kind of the FlutterFlow side of things. But maybe try asking something relevant to kind of education, ed tech.
Got it. Okay. Yes, I'm sure.
So maybe like write me a course plan for grade 4 physics or something like that.
For grade 4 physics. There we go. And when I tried this out for the first time, it was super snappy, so it should be fine. Who knows?
I was just on it before this, and it was working fine. So
yeah. Classic demo,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah, that's how it goes.
Okay, so that just deletes it. But if we look in here, this is beautiful because once again, this is what we've come to know and love. These are the two records of the two conversations we've just had, right?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Oh, there we go. Beautiful. Look at that.
Great.
Here's our course plan. So this is coming from ChatGPT. We got that all hooked up. And we've also got this copy to clipboard.
Yeah, so that's an interesting feature that I've just started using. It's essentially the mouse region widget.
Okay.
So, and
which
when
is
we get
hover.
into this, I'll show it. Yeah. So if you kind of wrap this container and text field in a mouse region, you can kind of set, on mouse enter and on mouse exit actions. So in this case, on mouse enter, show the button that allows you to kind of copy this to your clipboard. On mouse exit.
So I'm going to copy that.
Yeah.
I've got a little toast down there. And if I paste it into my URL, beautiful. Look at that.
There it is.
Love it. Yeah, so that's cool. So the mouse region, it's basically like hover state. And so you can say, when a user hovers on this, I want you to execute this logic. And so the logic you added to this mouse region is copy this thing to the clipboard, which is great because a lot of times you want to like get the response and go use it, add it into your notes, whatever.
Yeah. And it's a powerful feature because, when you use a button, for example, sometimes you're constrained by what you can kind of change about that button in terms of size and color, etc. If you want to just use a container and you can kind of customize that a lot more, you can use the hover state to make it act like a button, right? Like
Got it. Yeah.
On mouse enter and stuff like that. Yeah.
That's a good idea. Okay, so we're gonna get into the build in 1 second. If I click on this, will it bring it up?
Yeah, it should take you to that specific chat.
Oh, this is.
I think that's yours from yesterday.
This is mine from yesterday. Oh, that's hilarious. Okay, so I asked, "Are you ChatGPT?" No, I'm not ChatGPT. Okay,
so the cool thing here is we've built the backend in such a way that it includes all your previous messages with every prompt that you send, right? So it should keep kind of historical context. So if you ask something, not sure what you can ask here, but just referencing like a past question or a past response, it should be able to kind of continue that conversation.
Yeah, because that contextual knowledge is one of the like great benefits of these LLMs
Yeah.
that you can have an ongoing conversation and there's some context. And I'm using this all the time where I'm doing like follow-up questions like, oh, I didn't understand this, why this? I mean, I'll dump code in here and just ask it questions, be like, why does this
Exactly.
class work like this? And it's super helpful. Okay,
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
that's awesome. So there's our past chats. We can add a new chat right there, and we got our log out right there. Okay, cool. Cody? Did you want to say anything before we jump into the actual template?
The only thing that we didn't talk about is just the title. You can go up there and just
Oh, cool.
control,
Oh, so that you
yeah,
can change that.
change that, press enter,
Cody's AI, beautiful.
and then that'll change there, as well as if you go to the menu, it'll show kind of the title there as well.
Oh, nice. Oh,
Yeah.
wait. Oh. So okay, I was thinking that this was the name of kind of like the whole app or
No,
whatever,
no, no.
but this is
Just that
each.
specific chat.
Oh, that's cool. Okay, that's awesome. So that's and that's updating in the back end, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
So the way
So
ChatGPT does it is, I think as soon as you start a chat, based off of your initial prompt, it'll kind of auto title the chat. This is manual. Maybe one day we change it to, it'll auto populate, but we just
yeah.
want to, help you keep track of all the chats that you have going.
I actually like that better because when I'm perusing through old chats, it's easier for me to see, and it also opens up, I think, like a little bit better like search capabilities too.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay, cool. So let's jump into the template. Cody, can you see that?
I can. Yes, looks
Okay,
good.
let me close off everything here so we don't get any network issues. Okay, so we've got our main screen here, which is like the meat of our app. Um, and so maybe like let's walk through it like normally happens, right? So what I'm gonna do here is here's our prompt, and we're
We
probably gonna have a
it might be good to start on the home page actually, because that's where chat
homepage.
is initiated.
Oh, got it, got it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so here we're on our homepage. We ask a question, and we probably got some logic in here. We do have some logic, so let's just take a look at this. And okay, so the first thing we got a backend call to Firebase, right? And we're creating a chat thing. So why don't we go into our chat to see what this like looks like? So we've got this Firebase chats collection. We've got a unique ID. So that's just saying, this is just saying this is attaching it to our users, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So this is saying, so I'm signed in over here. I've got an account. John has an account, and I have a unique ID, and so that's referencing me because for each of these chats, we want it tied to the person's account,
Yeah.
right?
And that's important for the UI, because when you hit that menu button and you see all your past chats, that's being filtered based off of your unique user ID.
Got it.
You don't
Got
want to
it.
see anyone else's, right? So it's
Right.
important to make sure that you have that document reference here.
Okay. Great. Then we just got a timestamp. That's easy enough. And the title. And we have this title here. I mean, we could write this any way we want, but that was the title we just wrote in, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. All right. And then we've got a sub collection. Do we want to talk about this or do we want to come back when we get there?
I think we can quickly go over it. Yeah.
Okay. We got a timestamp. We got our first message. So
Yeah.
explain this to me.
So
It's
the
because
way
it's a
we,
Boolean.
yeah. So, and we'll get into this in more depth, but the way the OpenAI API works is you send with your prompt a set of kind of related messages. The first one is called a system message,
Okay.
and that lays the kind of context for the chat, essentially saying, you are a expert in education. We are here to ask you questions. Please answer in a very nice fashion, type thing.
Yeah, so the idea of these sort of system messages is that, and this is what allows people to build like niche specific LLM Lang Cheney type apps because the user doesn't see this. So if you want to make something like maybe you're like making an LLM chatbot for plumbers, and you've got all this like plumbing code, And before they enter into the question, you're going to say, "Hey, you're a professional plumber. I want you to answer in these ways." And so that the response they get is sort of tailored to your niche.
Exactly. And you can get pretty specific with these kind of context setting messages. For example, an app that I built before for ed tech, I had full kind of course syllabus, a full
Hmm.
syllabus in there,
Oh, that's
just to
cool.
allow it to
Yeah.
reference that when students are asking it questions about the course, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, that's cool. Okay. Because part of this, and this is sort of bigger picture of these things, is that kind of the problem or the thing that we haven't sort of solved yet is that we wanna sort of like tailor it to our data or our domain. And so this is sort of part of how we do that.
Exactly. And the Boolean there is just to flag that this is a message that you do not want to show up in the chat itself.
Got it.
So when
Got it.
that's
Okay, so we're
true,
gonna
it,
see
it
that.
doesn't go through. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so we're gonna see that in a second. Okay, awesome. So then we've got message, which is just our,
It's the prompt essentially.
it's just the prompt, right? The user,
And
it
user is either, in this context, either kind of the user, like me sending in the prompt, or the response from ChatGPT. So it's
got
essentially
it.
kind of man versus machine. And that
Yeah,
just is kind of the what's used to kind of note that, this should be coming from the right hand side of the chat as the user versus the left hand side of the chat as kind of the AI response.
right, right. Okay, so the idea is that we've got this like left to right UI, and we've got two different people talking,
Mm-hmm.
a robot and a person, and so we need to be able to distinguish those two. But
Exactly.
and this is why it's kind of interesting and it can be kind of confusing because these chats are owned in our backend by users, but we also in these chats there are two users in the chats, so it can be like a little bit confusing here when we look at it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, great. And then once again, these messages are going to be tied to a user.
Yeah.
Um,
You
great.
don't necessarily need to do that. I have it in there just for kind of tracking purposes
Got it. Yeah.
because this sub collection is already tied to the chat collection, which is tied to a UID already. So
Got it. Okay. Okay. Sounds good. All right. So let's jump back into here into our actions. So our first thing, all right, let's get some context here. So this is the first time we come in. We do a question. How old is Messi? And then we get a back end call. We're making a chats collection or a
exactly.
document.
And you would have seen for the text field where you enter your prompt, there is no button to, press to submit it, right? And that's because we have it on a on submit action, which
Yeah,
allows you
yeah.
to just press enter and it
Yes.
runs the action.
Yes, and this is actually a new thing that is that we have enter key bindings. We've actually entered in a bunch of enter key bindings all over the place where like you would expect them to be, but those are and actually I saw your video on Twitter from this and or a similar project,
Yeah.
and I said, "Wait, do we have an enter key binding on submit?" and it's like, "Yeah, we do now." And be like, "Oh, that's amazing." So
Yeah, there's nothing worse than, being in the user interface, hitting enter after you type something in and nothing happened, right?
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah,
I've always thought that there should be a sort of like we should like get together as like a sort of design community and come up with like standard shortcuts. So it's like escape always gets rid of modals, and
yeah,
enter always like submits or whatever anytime like form inputs.
exactly. And a new feature that I think is coming is action components, right? So if you
Y-
have a submit button and you want to also be able to, submit when you hit enter, you can have kind of one action doing the same thing, but duplicated across both of those kind of action initiations
Oh, very cool. Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, that'll
instead
be
of
great.
duplicating it. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Cool. All right. So we're making a chats document.
Oh,
UID, a timestamp, title of that chat. That's all cool. And then we've got our output variable because we're going to get a response from our backend, and that'll be dumped into this variable so we can reference it later. Cool. Then we're updating our app state.
yeah. So
Await.
there's two app states here. One is awaiting reply, So when that is turned true, it means that the API is running, the machine's thinking, and we're waiting for a response.
Yeah.
And there's a couple things that are kind of based off of that app state, namely the loading little squiggle message thing where it shows that the AI is typing essentially. So
Those
we're
like
waiting
bouncing dots.
exactly.
That it's like, oh, it's thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is just a flag to allow that to be conditionally shown, and then once we get a reply, that switches back to false, and that animation goes away.
Yeah. Well, now I think there's two things that's kind of interesting about this. One is just like history of computing, because like these like loading states, I don't think that we would have guessed like at this point in computing history that these would be important things. Because like, oh, like computers are getting super fast or whatever, But now one is that the internet, which was normally just like sharing linked essentially like text documents, are now like building apps, and no one thought that was ever going to happen, right? And so we've got all this like high network activity where we're sending data across like huge amounts of data across the globe, and so we get all these waiting states, right? And the other thing is like these actual, and I've talked about this in a couple of videos, but these like loading states are actually really important. And the great book, like The Design of Everyday Things by Don Norman, he talks about how like one important design principle is that you should always be indicating to your users the system state. So like what's going on. And so, and especially now we have these like huge LLMs that are like can be slow, right? You got to indicate to your user that, hey, we're just thinking, nothing's wrong, nothing's failed, we're not getting a 404 error, the UI front end isn't busted, it's like everything's fine. And so that little animation that like when you're designing it, you might think, this is kind of stupid, do I really need this? And it's like, yeah, you really do, and
it's important.
Yeah.
And until there's more NVIDIA GPUs running everything out there, there's going to be these lags, right?
Yeah.
And you never want an instance where your user is like, what's happening? Did I break something?
Yeah, because
right?
then they're going to refresh the page or they're going to leave, right? And if they refresh the page, you're just going to do it again, and they're going to be waiting again,
Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
And then just quickly, the prompt there, app state, whatever the prompt is, I put it into app state, just so when things are loading, I can clear that text field. Because that's, when you're using iMessage and you press send, it clears the text field, right? Just so we want to have that just for reference and then be able to clear the text field.
Yeah, and I love this. I love this example because like this is what's helpful about like walking through real apps, because like if you're building like a ChatGPT app, you're like, okay, so I just got to figure out how to use like OpenAI's API or whatever, and like show this. And there's all these like 10,000 little things like this. Be like, hey, make sure you clear your field, which you only realize when you're actually building. You're like, oh, there's text still in there. I got to get rid of. How do I get rid of it?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool. And then we got a widget animation.
Yeah, this is just a cute little thing that when you hit enter, the chat kind of slides downwards to the right.
Just for that
and then
first
it transfers
one.
to the next page.
Exactly. Got it. Okay. Yeah, that's cool. So it goes off, and then we move into our normal. Into our normal chat UI. Okay, where am I?
Exactly.
Okay, I'm right here, right?
I think action 4.
Oh, action 4. Okay. Action 4, and so this is the API call, right?
Yeah. So this is creating the first message.
Okay.
In the chat that we created, and you'll see.
Okay, so this isn't the API call.
No, not yet.
Got it.
This is still, this is creating your first message document within the sub collection. And you'll see their chat reference.
Yes.
And if you click into reference, you'll remember that we put chat ref as the action output when we created the chat.
Right, yeah.
So we want to say we want to create the first message, and it's going to be in the chat collection or chat document. Associated to the chat that we just created.
Got it. Okay, so we're creating that first record, and are we just instantiating these fields with so timestamp we have, first message we have.
So this is okay. So For things like the system message, and we also have something called a user reinforcement message. It's essentially system message. Here's the context. You know, you're this type of
That's that
chatbot.
background information that the user doesn't see, but
Yeah,
we're sending over to OpenAI.
yeah. Sometimes OpenAI, the system message, like the AI will respond how you want it to respond initially, but sometimes it kind of loses that context throughout a conversation.
That
So the system
it
message,
hallucinates. That's
sorry,
what we call that, right? Yeah.
exactly. Sometimes, yeah.
So it thinks
So
it knows. It's called hallucination because it's not just like I'm wrong. It's not just an error, but it thinks it
yeah,
knows, but it's actually wrong.
yeah, and also it'll kind of forget that this is its purpose,
Got
right?
it.
And
Got
it'll
it.
start answering questions unrelated to its kind of true purpose.
Oh, got it. Okay.
So because of that, we also have something called a user reinforcement
Okay.
message, which is just an initial message sent through after the system message as the user saying, hey, as a reminder, this is your purpose. And this is something OpenAI actually suggests you do. It just kind of reinforces that initial kind of context set of message.
That's funny.
And it just kind of, yeah, it minimizes the hallucination a bit more.
That's funny too that it's like we have all this like super advanced technology and it's like, hey, just remember to like remind the AI what it's doing a couple times.
Yeah. Hopefully all of this is obsolete soon,
Yeah,
right? All of
right.
these little workarounds. But,
Yeah, that's funny. Okay.
and just quickly before I move on, you'll see the system message that's being pulled from an app state as well. And I've done that just to, you know, instead of typing in system messages and user reinforcement messages for every separate action, I just have it once as an app state. And then the user developing the app can change that to whatever they want once, and then it flows through the
Yeah,
rest of the
yeah.
app, right?
Okay, got it. Yeah, so that's a good idea. Is that you've got this text that you're reusing, and you're like, okay, I'm just gonna dump this, and that's a good example of a use for app state as opposed to like page state or something where it's like, hey, I'm gonna use this in different places. Let's just dump it in here, keep it. It's a little database.
Yeah, for sure. And it makes this template that will be on the marketplace that much more interesting, right?
Oh,
Because
right. Yeah,
right
that's a great
right
yeah.
now it's yeah, right now the context is set for kind of
Okay.
education, but you can change that system message at the app state level. You can change the user reinforcement message to whatever context you want, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
then this app changes like that.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Oh, that's a really good point. That's a really good point. Okay. All right, so we got our message, our user, that's all makes sense. The unique ID, how are we generating this? That's from the user record reference. Okay,
Yep.
cool. All right, do we want to stop for questions?
Sure, yeah. Let me just scroll down here. FlutterFlow University is so great. Can you quickly explain how to change the underline color of a text field when pressing on it? Yeah, so in a text field, in the kind of, you know, characteristics on the right-hand side, you can scroll down and there's a drop down for kind of input border type. I think there's outline, there's underline, and there's none. Whatever you select there, you can go down and go to focus border color and change the color of whether it's an outline or a underline. So for example, if you set that to red, when you click on it, the outline would turn into red. If it's an underline, it would just be an underline of red.
So focus is when you're clicked into it.
Yeah.
Yep. Cool.
Any updates on FlutterFlow AI full access, or is it still in beta? Do you know about that?
It's still in beta. That's true. We have, excuse me. We're working on it because we actually have a couple of additional AI features that we're working on, so that we're going to have a sort of AI suite, as it will. So we're getting kind of like a whole package to sort of work with. I'm trying to be delicate because I don't know what I'm allowed to say. But the idea is we don't want the AI tools to be just sort of like one small thing, but to be integrated into your whole process for building your app. And so we're working on polishing up all of those features, and then once we're ready, we want to get that out to everyone. But I don't have specific dates, but it's not going to be crazy far off. That's all I can say.
Yeah, more
to come. Yeah.
I think we can jump back into it.
Great.
Yeah. We'll get back to questions.
Cool.
In a bit. Yeah.
All right. So let's see. We've made our original chat reference in our collection. We've dealt with animation stuff. We stored the prompt, fun animation, created our message sub collection, and now we are doing this. I don't know what this is.
So when we ultimately do the API call, and we'll get into this, there is a custom function that takes all the previous messages, compiles it into just a JSON format, and that is what's sent to the API endpoint, essentially.
Got it. So this is...
And the reason we do that is it allows kind of all the previous messages to be kind of stacked together in that JSON, so it has the historical context.
Got it. So we're constructing the JSON object here that's going to be sent off to OpenAI.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's correct. Do we want to look at that function right now? Because it's the only custom function in here, right?
Yeah. Sure.
Okay. Let's.
Yeah. The next, just quickly, the next few kind of backend calls there are just system message, user reinforcement, and then the actual prompt.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So let's come into this code. We only got one here, and it's fairly simple right here. So the arguments, the stuff we're passing in here is we've got a list of message record, which we're calling messages, and then we just got a string called new message, right? And so let's see, we got a list of maps, so like objects if you're coming from let's say JavaScript, and those are just strings. So like name John, right? And so there it is. So we're getting our messages. Now, what is this messages record? This is this is the document. Oh, so this is
it's the full document essentially.
It's a full from our messages sub collection. Correct?
Exactly, for a specific chat.
Got it. Okay, so let's get this because we're getting in the weeds here, which I love. So let's just go over here. So what we're passing in is this. Right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
we got one of these, and for each of these function calls, because remember, this function is creating that JSON object that we're sending to OpenAI, okay? So we're dumping in this. Where is that? Okay, that's this right here. Boom.
Yeah, and you'll see if you click on the argument that is a list, right? Because we want to, as new messages are created, add it to the list. So every time you send a new call to the API, it has the new message as well as all the old messages.
Got it. Yeah. Cool. Okay, so we're dumping in that document from that messages sub collection, and we're looping over it. And for each, it has these. Okay, so there's some kind of like autocompletes. This is not in here. This is stuff coming from the editor itself. So you can ignore this and ignore this, and we just got our callback function here, or like our for each function, where here's our element. So that'll be each of the messages in the messages list, right? And then we've got our, where does this come in? Oh, that's just our list over here.
Yeah,
and
so
we're adding to this.
Yeah.
We're just adding to our messages.
Essentially, it's taking each of the documents, and then it's creating for the actual JSON object two fields for each document. One is the message itself, and the other is the role or the user, right?
Got it.
So you can think of kind of the JSON list of being message one, here's the text, who sent that, man or machine type thing.
Yeah, so there's like, in a sense, this is nothing fancy or interesting. No. This is just like OpenAI says, here's how I want your document structured, and Cody, you're just doing that here, right?
Exactly.
So this isn't any sort of fancy stuff going on here, right?
No.
Cool. And so we're forming that, and at the end we'd have to just encode that JSON because that's just what the API requires. And that's it, right? So when we're done with this, we're gonna have a JSON. So if you went to OpenAI's API and just looked, it's like it's expecting this, data structure, and that's what's gonna come out of here at the end.
Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So we're just creating that stuff right here. And so we come in here, do. Where should we stop?
Let's go to the API call.
Okay, go to the API, and we want to see a little branching to get there. Here we go. Okay, so here's our call. And do we want to jump into the call?
Sure.
And look at that. Okay. Oh, poop.
Maybe just delete it for now. The whole kind of token.
Yeah. Well,
just delete it, and then we can not save it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to go delete that?
Yeah.
On your account, you go delete that, or I mean, in your OpenAI account. And I'll talk through this.
Oh.
I'll talk through this. That's hilarious. It happens. Okay, so this is just sort of standard OpenAI stuff here. So we've got our chat completions endpoint, and it's accepting this JSON body. We're telling it the model, and of course, if you're using this, you can switch this out. You can switch this out for a different model. If you want to send different information, of course, you can do all that. And then we've got this messages. That's what we were just constructing. And that's coming from this variable right here.
That's right.
So, yeah, I mean, pretty standard API call.
Yeah, and if you go to response and test, so we won't do it. And you might have to click variable first. And then go to response and test. Yeah. We won't do it now because we deleted the authentication token, but here's just, if you haven't kind of dealt with APIs in FlutterFlow before, once you set it up, you can test it out here, see what the response JSON actually looks like, and then set your JSON paths appropriately so you can find them easily when you're actually dealing with it in FlutterFlow.
Got it. Yeah. And their JSON path is just, you get back this big fat data object, and you're like, you normally, what you're going to actually use in your app is just like one property out, like the message, right? But you get all this extra information. You're like, I don't care about that extra information. And JSON path, it's a query language designed to help you filter through all that garbage you don't want and just get to the stuff you do want.
Exactly.
Okay.
And the value there that you're on, that's just an example of the output from that custom function that we just went through, right?
Yeah. That's a good point. So what that custom function we're looking at was just constructing this. And for testing purposes, Cody has in here, this is what it's going to look like. So I want to test it here for, because the idea is like when you're testing here, you can just, like, you can design all your APIs here. You don't have to like go into your app and actually build it to actually test it. This is kind of like Postman inside of FlutterFlow if you use Postman or Insomnia or something like that. An API
makes this
design
whole process. It makes this whole process so much quicker.
So much quicker. Yeah. Because honestly, like sometimes OpenAI is fine, but some APIs are rough.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, so we're making an API call to OpenAI, and then we're going to get something back. That's the interesting part, right? So let's assume we get something real back, and we're just making a message, right?
Yeah, essentially, it's still referencing the same chat, and it's essentially, from the API response, what is the last message that was responded, or that was given to us? Is that from man or machine? If it's from machine, that is the response. Commit it to the database as kind of the next message. and then that'll flow into the actual UI into the chat, right? So once it's committed as a message, you'll see that in the actual chat.
Got it. Okay, so we call the API, we get back a message, and storing that. We're
And then
waiting.
that's turning off the reply because we just got the message, so that takes that animation out.
Yep. And then widget animation.
Yeah, it's a kind of a fade in type thing. So when the message
Got
comes,
it. Yeah.
it fades in.
UI stuff.
Yeah.
Sweet. So that's the whole thing. And what's funny is like, okay, so we got 19 steps here, 17, whatever. And so I'm like, it feels complicated, but I'm like, yo, this is the whole app. You know, so it's like to be able to like essentially, if you think about this is a little bit a crass simplification, but it's like you got 17 lines of code here of logic, you know, to run a super powerful you know, chat app. Cool. All right. Well, the only other thing I wanted to look at is a little bit of the UI of the sort of chat interface. Can we do that?
Absolutely, yeah.
Because I think this is kind of one of the interesting things, one of the more interesting sort of like UI problems that you got to solve if you're making one of these chat apps.
And this is, yeah, like you said, any chat app, you know, people go about it in different ways. I've found this approach to be pretty scalable, regardless if it's, you know, you're chatting to AI or it's people going back and forth.
Okay.
And essentially, you know, it's a list view reversed.
Okay. So we're in a list view right here. Okay.
Yeah. So
a list view is great because it's optimized for performance. It's only gonna like paint on the screen the stuff that you see. And so that's the main difference between a list view and a column is that a column is, you basically should only use a column for like the main architecture of your app, not for like huge lists of things.
Correct. Yeah. And the good thing about a list view is if you want to do, you know, a backend query and you want to have a list of things coming back from that query, the list view handles that very well, and it's very kind of intuitive, as well as if there's any changes to your backend database, it populates very quickly in the list view.
Got it. Okay, cool. So we've got a list view here, and what does our list view have in it? One thing, one beautiful component.
That's right.
That's cool. Okay, so let's go into this component because this is really, if we just looked at like the meat logic. Here we're getting into the UI meat. Wait, exactly. The logic meat and the UI meat. That's what I'm talking about. Okay. Yeah. So this little thing right here. And I was actually really interested in this because I was like, I began thinking about it to be like, oh wait, how would I do this? You know? And this is a great solution. Okay, so let's twirl some of this close so we can get like a big picture of what's going on here. Okay, so we just got a container. Then we've got a column. So we got in this column, we just got two stuff stacked on top of each other, which is a system message and a user message.
Yep.
And this can be an atomic unit because these are always going to be paired, right?
So it could be separate components, but because we have you know, the role field when messages are sent back to us, whether it's man or machine.
Yes.
We can feed that in as a, you know, component parameter. So it knows whether it's the human or the AI, and then it can, you know, conditionally make visible just one of the two, essentially.
Yeah. So we've got that. We see one response and then the next. Yeah. And that is to say, just because we have both, it doesn't mean that we're always showing both and one's sort of like empty.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So we got these two rows, and of course these are going to have to be parameters in here because these are going to be, this is coming from our user. Well, it's actually not going to come from our user. It's going to come from our backend, right?
It's going to be coming from, the backend, the messages sub-collection of the chat that we're referencing.
Yes. Okay. But here we just have it as a parameter. So we've got three
Yeah.
parameters: the message text, which is our response. Now, okay, so this is coming from our backend because everything's going to be written to our backend. So we're always just pulling from our backend. We're not writing straight from the API. That's an important
No.
point, right?
Yeah. So if you remember kind of the action chain, it was API call and then immediately commit to our database the response. Right.
Yeah. Which makes this just a much more sort of like scalable option, right? So one is we're not having to constantly ping this API, is we can store this message, we can reference it back in that like side panel thingy.
Yeah.
So okay, so cool. So we got our message text, which and we got a user message. You know that what's this GPT response thing?
Yeah. So
Boolean.
that's just denoting whether it's, the AI response or not. If it's the AI response, that top row will show and the bottom row won't. If it's a user message, the bottom
Okay.
row will show and the top row will not.
Oh, cool. Okay, so that's why we see these eyeballs right here, and we can see.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even. Yeah, that's cool. So we can see right here, um, GPT response. So it has a conditional visibility. It's that GPT response right there is referencing this parameter, and we're only going to see it if it's true.
That's right. Yeah.
Cool. So we probably passed over that in the action chain, but the idea is until we get a response, this is false. Once we get a response, hashtag and we add it into our Firebase, then this will be turned to true.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Sweet.
Yeah.
Anything else?
The only other things here, we don't need to get into this in detail, but the containers and rows are set up in such a way that they're a bit flexible. So depending on how big the message is
Oh,
coming
cool.
back, it'll kind of elongate to a certain point, similar to
Okay.
how you would kind of see it in iMessage.
Yeah. Cool. Oh, that's very cool. Yeah. And then we've got that mouse region we talked about. And so with the action on it to copy the message to clipboard. And this is a good principle too here where like the broadest possible design principle is like your hover and your click targets should be, let's say, generous, right? So you don't want it to be just on the little bitty icon right there. Is it like it like in my mind I'm like almost the bigger the better.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's good. Cool. Um, that's great. I think that's everything. Did you want to talk about anything else?
I think that's good for this component. Do we want to just show how we send parameters through to a component?
Sure. Yeah. Okay, so here we've got these parameters, and parameters are data that's going to be filtered in that you're going to send into this component because this components are going to be on a page, right? And you're going to want to fill these with data here, like a message text here. So we've set them up, and I always like to say this: you have to like we have parameters, you have to like receive them, so you have to set up the receiving, and then you have to set up the sending. So here, this is where we receive the data, and then what Cody is talking about, where we send it. So we go over here, and we go click on our chat bubble. And then so down here is where we set up the sending.
Exactly. So this list view is being populated by, the call to the messages for that specific chat.
Yeah.
Each component you'll see there will be populated based off of one message in the record.
Oh, got it. Okay, so let's get this into our brains right here. Oh wait, I'm not selected here. There we go. So we've got this.
So the query is on the scaffold, I believe.
Oh, the query is on the scaffold. So when the page loads, that's where the data is coming on. We're just calling this message. We can call it whatever we want, but we're calling it message. And this is a Firestore document, and it's coming from here.
Which is the call at the scaffold level.
Yeah, and which I always really like about FlutterFlow is that when you hover here, it highlights where this data is coming from. So it's
I didn't even know that.
Oh yeah, isn't that
That's
cool?
great. Yeah.
Well, because especially on page, it's like you can have a couple different calls, and a lot of times I mean, this is probably my bad, but I'm like, they're not always named the best. So, and you know, it's like messages. It's like, oh, we got a billion messages in here. Like, what message is this? You know?
Yeah.
And so here, or highlighting it and highlights it on the UI, because of the scaffold and in your widget tree there. So,
Yeah, exactly.
okay, so cool. So that's where that's coming from. And then let's cancel out of here. And we've got our chat bubble. Da, 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 da. Oh, over here. And then we scroll down. So that's where this stuff is coming from.
Yeah, so it's essentially, you know, we're making that backend call to get all the messages for this chat.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're streaming those messages into this list view.
Yeah.
And for each message, there will be a chat bubbles components stacked on top of each other.
Yeah,
And for
yeah,
each
yeah,
of
yeah.
those components, you know, what are we sending through to it? It's these fields here. So, you know, for one instance of that component, we're sending through the message, and we're sending through whether it's man or machine.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Okay, cool. And okay, here's the other thing that I learned from watching this is that it's like I was realizing, oh, it has to populate from the bottom up, and a list view you can do reverse on.
Yeah, you can do reverse, and then when you're actually doing the back end call, you can filter and sort. So you can sort on, you know, time created for the message, either
Yeah, yeah,
increasing or
yeah.
decreasing. I think in this case it's decreasing.
Okay,
It gets a
yeah.
bit weird with the logic, but it's decreasing sorted and then reverse list view to get it as kind of a message board.
And this is one of these like little things that you don't think about until you start building it. Where you're like, oh, I have to have a list that populates from the bottom up and is sorted newest at bottom. And
Takes
you're
a
like,
lot of like trial and error. Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah. So, which is great about this template.
Unless you can work it out in your head, I cannot.
I cannot either. So, um, amazing. Okay, cool. Well, I think that's everything. All the meat of this app. Did you want to say anything else about this or cover anything else, Cody?
I don't think so. There's obviously more, you know, we could get into, but I think that's good for now. And obviously, if there's questions after the fact, you know, I'll jump onto the question board and just make sure we answer any questions about this app
Cool,
specifically
cool,
after the fact.
cool. Awesome. Well, great. Well, then we're gonna be publishing this later today on the marketplace. Hopefully, not exposing more API keys. And so use your own. And thanks everyone for checking it out. And we'll try to answer some questions after the fact. And we'll see y'all next week.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much.